Wolf attack shocks Hamburg. Rare incident in busy shopping street. A highly unfolded and alarming incident unfolded in Hamburg, where a woman was bitten by wolf in a crowded urban shopping area, something virtually unheard of in modern German history. Now let's dive deeper and explore every layer of this story on our AI
So
podcast.
imagine you're just walking down a bustling shopping street on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right, just a normal day.
Yeah, totally normal. You were dodging delivery trucks, maybe checking your phone for directions, just totally immersed in the concrete jungle.
You're completely tuned out of nature.
Exactly. The sounds around you are just the standard urban hum,
Yeah?
like exhaust engines, overlapping conversations, maybe the rattle of a tram going
The
by.
usual city noise.
Yeah. And then you look up and like 10 feet away, staring right at you, is a wild, disoriented apex predator.
Oh, man.
And I'm not talking about stray dog here,
Okay.
a full-grown timber wolf.
Which is just terrifying to even picture.
It really is. So welcome to this deep dive into a stack of notes, articles, and research you've shared with us about a truly staggering recent event. We're looking at a wolf attack right in the heart of Hamburg, Germany.
Yeah, a really unprecedented situation.
But, our mission for this deep dive isn't just to recap a sensational headline. We're really going to unpack the underlying biology of what happens when urban environments and wildlife violently collide.
Right, the actual mechanics of it.
Exactly. And how one isolated incident like this has the power to shatter decades of conservation policy.
It really forces us to look at the physical and psychological boundaries we've built. I mean, we operate under this assumption that the wild stays in the wild, right?
Yeah, and the city belongs to us.
Exactly. The city is our zone. And when those lines cross, the resulting friction is just immediate. So to understand the massive policy debates and, the ecological implications contained in your sources, we really have to look closely at how this encounter actually played out on the pavement.
I keep looking at this scenario like a biological out-of-bounds error.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
It's like dropping a deep-sea submarine onto a highway. The organism itself might be functioning perfectly, but the environment is so radically wrong that a catastrophic failure is just inevitable.
Yeah, the context is completely broken.
Right. So let's get into the timeline. Walk us through the physical reality of what actually happened on that street.
Okay, so the sources pinpoint the location as Grossbergstrasse, which is located in the Altona district of Hamburg. And this is a really crucial detail.
Because it's not exactly out in the woods.
No, not at all. Altona is not like some leafy transitional suburb bordering a dense forest.
Right.
It is a highly populated, hard infrastructure shopping district. We're talking lots of glass, lots of concrete.
A totally unnatural environment for a wolf.
Completely. And a woman on the street noticed this wolf, which, according to reports, appeared severely disoriented and erratic.
Okay.
But what she did next kind of defies every basic survival instinct we have.
Wait, what did she do?
Rather than backing away or, seeking shelter inside a shop, she approached the animal. She actually attempted to physically guide it away from the crowd.
Wow. See, I call this golden retriever syndrome.
Golden retriever syndrome. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a perfect illustration of our modern blind spot. We have completely replaced our baseline survival instincts with this sort of, this Disney logic.
Right, where every animal is just a misunderstood friend.
Exactly. We are so accustomed to domesticated animals that our brains process a wild apex predator wandering past a storefront as, like, a lost neighborhood dog that just needs a little ushering.
Just needs to be pointed in the right direction.
Right.
Well, that golden retriever syndrome exists for a very specific historical reason, which we'll definitely get into shortly. But you are totally right to highlight how dangerous that instinct is.
Because the wolf didn't just trot away.
No. Biologically speaking, invading the personal space of a highly stressed predator on a hard surface with no clear escape route, well, it triggered a defensive stray.
Oh, man.
Yeah. The wolf bit the woman in the face.
Which is just a horrifying outcome.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, she was treated at a local hospital and has since been discharged, thankfully.
Okay, that's good.
But the chaos didn't end on the pavement. The wolf fled the immediate scene and was eventually tracked down in Benalster Lake.
Wait, a lake right in the city?
Yeah, right in the city center. And the subsequent capture really highlights the sheer raw power of this animal. The police didn't just walk up and slip a leash on it.
I would think so, no.
The wolf violently resisted capture in the water for about an hour before authorities could finally secure it.
An hour.
A full hour. It is currently under veterinary care while officials determine its fate.
Wow. A full hour of violent resistance against an entire police unit really underscores the gap between our perception of a furry forest creature and the reality of a cornered wild animal.
It's a massive reality check.
But going back to that golden retriever syndrome we were talking about, that blind spot doesn't just come out of nowhere, right?
No, it's learned behavior, or rather unlearned.
Right. We act this way because an entire generation of people in this region simply doesn't have a cultural memory of living alongside these predators.
Yeah, the historical context provided in your sources is super fascinating here. The presence of wolves in modern Germany is actually a relatively recent phenomenon.
Really? I feel like wolves and German folklore go hand in hand.
They do in the folklore, sure,
Yeah.
but during the Cold War era, wolves were essentially extirpated from the region. I mean, they were completely wiped off the map due to hunting and habitat loss.
Oh, wow. I had no idea they were entirely gone.
Yeah. It wasn't until the reunification of Germany and the fall of the Berlin Wall that wildlife corridors opened back up.
That's incredible timing.
It is. So over the past few decades, wolves have slowly migrated back from Eastern Europe and established new populations.
And this return has been marketed to the public as a huge triumph, hasn't it?
A massive one. It has been universally championed by environmental groups as this flagship conservation success story.
Yeah.
You know, they successfully restored a keystone species to its natural habitat.
Right.
And to back up that narrative of a safe return, the data from Germany's Federal Agency for Nature Conservation points to a really striking statistic.
What's that?
Prior to this event on Grossbergstrasse, there had not been a single recorded wolf attack on a human in Germany since 1998.
Since 1998, that's nearly 3 decades.
Decades of peaceful coexistence. So the officially sanctioned narrative has been that, while wolves are wild, they are naturally evasive and essentially harmless to humans as long as you leave them alone.
But see, this is where the PR campaign of conservation kind of crashes into reality.
How do you mean?
Well, when we label bringing back major predators as a pure success story, we inadvertently strip away the danger.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, we sold the public on the romantic, majestic idea of the wolf returning to the forests, but we completely skipped the safety briefing on what to do when you actually meet one.
Right, we left out the whole apex predator part of the brochure.
Exactly.
Right.
So does a conservation success inherently create a false sense of security?
That's the big question. It creates a complacency that assumes the animals will always play by our rules and, stay in their designated nature reserves.
Which clearly didn't happen here.
No. The harmless label is now under intense scrutiny. This event really forces ecologists and policymakers to put aside that romanticized version of conservation and look strictly at the behavioral mechanisms.
Right, because why did this specific animal end up in Altona and why did it attack?
Exactly.
Let's dig into that biology then. Because a healthy wild wolf doesn't just wake up and decide to go window shopping in downtown Hamburg.
They absolutely do not. A healthy wolf is incredibly risk-averse when it comes to humans. When an attack like this occurs, it is a massive behavioral anomaly.
So what went wrong?
Well, the source material outlines 4 distinct biological and ecological triggers that could explain the mechanism of this attack.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is illness, specifically something like rabies or a severe neurological disorder.
Which would explain the erratic behavior?
Exactly. Rabies literally attacks the central nervous system. It alters brain chemistry to completely disable the amygdala's fear response.
Wow. So they just lose their natural fear of us.
Right. The animal becomes totally incapable of assessing risk.
Which perfectly aligns with the extreme disorientation the witnesses reported on the street.
It does. Now, the second potential trigger is the physical reality of urban disorientation.
Just being in the city itself.
Yeah, think about a wolf's sensory apparatus. Their hearing and olfactory senses are evolved for the acoustic environment of a forest.
Right. Soft earth trees that absorb sound.
Exactly. But when you drop that organism into the center of Hamburg, the sensory overload is agonizing.
Can't even imagine.
You've got sirens, car exhaust, and all these overlapping sound waves bouncing off hard glass and concrete. It creates a chaotic acoustic trap.
So it's literally painful for them.
Yes, it pushes the animal's nervous system into a state of sheer blinding panic.
So the city itself is physically overwhelming their hardware.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so what's the third trigger?
Habituation. This is an ecological term for when an animal's risk-reward calculation gets rewired by human activity.
Like feeding them.
Basically, if a wolf discovers that human garbage bins or deliberate feedings offer an easy, high-calorie reward, That caloric drive eventually overrides their natural wariness.
So they stop seeing us as a threat.
Right. They stop viewing humans as apex threats and start viewing our habitats as cafeterias.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the fourth trigger is what happened right before the bite.
Exactly. Acute spatial pressure.
The cornering.
Yeah. Even if the wolf wasn't sick or habituated, the geometry of the situation was a trap.
Because the street was crowded.
Yes, and when the woman approached to guide it away, she invaded its critical flight zone. On a crowded pavement surrounded by buildings and pedestrians, the wolf's flight option was physically blocked.
And fight or flight, if flight is gone, you fight.
Exactly. When a highly stressed wild animal is cornered with no escape route, the biological default is fight.
But hold on, reading through these article excerpts, I feel like they are totally burying the lead.
What do you mean?
Well, they list all these fascinating behavioral theories, rabies, sensory overload, habituation, but they don't give us the actual answer. Where is the medical data?
Ah. Yeah, it is the glaring blind spot in the reporting.
It's worse than a blind spot. It's like diagnosing a fatal car crash by staring at a dented bumper, but refusing to pop the hood to check if the brake lines were cut.
That's a very fair point.
I mean, there is no confirmed medical condition or toxicology report mentioned in the sources at all.
None.
We have zero independent wildlife expert analysis of the wolf's health, just reactive quotes from officials. If this wolf turns out to be rabid, this isn't an urban wildlife story at all.
No, it would be a public health story.
Right. It's a medical anomaly. Why are we analyzing behavioral ecology if we don't even know if the animal's brain was infected?
You are looking at this like a scientist, which is entirely logical.
Well, thank you.
But the underlying pathology, whether it's a virus, habituation, or just acoustic panic, is really the only thing that matters to an ecologist. But that brings us to a harsh reality about how society functions.
Which is?
The political machine does not wait for a necropsy or a toxicology report.
Oh, of course not.
The visceral image of a woman bitten in the face on a shopping street moves instantly. The science is slow, but the terror is fast.
Wow. The science is slow, but the terror is fast.
So the political fallout is already outpacing the biological facts.
Significantly. And for you listening, the timing of this incident is critical to understand the fallout.
Right, there was something else going on.
Yes. According to the political context provided in your sources, this attack in Hamburg collided directly with a massive policy shift that was already underway in Germany.
The new hunting laws.
Exactly. Just prior to this event, the Bundesrat, which is the legislative body representing the 16 German states, approved highly debated, controlled wolf hunting laws.
And what is the mechanism behind those laws? Like, what are they actually trying to achieve?
The legislation is designed to actively manage and cull the growing wolf populations, primarily to protect rural agriculture.
Ah, so it's about the farmers. Yes. As wolf numbers have rebounded, farmers have suffered increasing economic losses from livestock predation. Environment Minister Carsten Schneider placed significant emphasis on this move.
Trying to find a middle ground.
Right. Trying to find a balance in a highly charged standoff between conservationists who want to protect the species and agricultural groups who are losing their livelihoods.
And right in the middle of this tense legislative standoff, an apex predator shows up on Grossbergstrasse.
It acts as an incredible accelerant.
I bet.
Even though a wolf wandering into a major city center is an isolated warning signal and statistically completely anomalous, its power as a cultural symbol is massive.
It just changes the whole conversation.
It does. The sheer shock value overrides the previous decades of the harmless narrative. It provides an immediate emotional justification for implementing those stricter hunting and culling policies much faster and much more broadly than initially planned.
It really demonstrates the disproportionate weight of a terrifying anecdote over decades of quiet data.
Oh, absolutely.
We just established that there hadn't been an attack since 1998.
Right.
That is 25 years of statistical safety. But human psychology doesn't weigh a spreadsheet of 25 years of peaceful coexistence against one traumatic afternoon in Hamburg equally.
Not at all. The bloody anecdote always wins the public debate.
Always. The challenge for policymakers is nearly impossible. I mean, how do you legislate rationally when the long-term data says safe, but your constituents are terrified because of one highly visible, chaotic event?
It is the ultimate stress test for environmental policy. How authorities respond to this single wolf, whether they wait for scientifically backed medical data or rely on reactive, fear-driven legislation, will set a precedent for all of Europe.
Because it's not just a local issue anymore.
Exactly. Because at its core, this isn't just about one animal in a lake. It is about the friction of shared geography.
Well, let's pull these threads together. We started with a stack of sources about a wild headline, and we've uncovered the deeply complex mechanics of modern conservation.
It's a lot more complicated than it looks on the surface.
It really is. An incredibly rare, terrifying attack on a busy Hamburg street has effectively punctured the long-held, romanticized myth of the totally harmless wolf.
And while the biology suggests this behavior was driven by extreme urban sensory overload or maybe severe illness, the absence of confirmed medical details has left a void.
A void that fear just rushes into.
Right. In that void, the political reaction is taking over. The shock of the event is acting as high-octane fuel for new controlled hunting laws, proving that the speed of public fear will always outpace the speed of scientific reality.
And, the reason this matters to you listening, even if you are thousands of miles away from Germany, is that this is a global mechanism.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah. As our cities continuously sprawl outward, paving over natural habitats, and as our modern conservation efforts successfully bring endangered predators back from the brink, the invisible line between the wild and the neighborhood is just disappearing.
The overlap is inevitable.
Exactly. Nature does not respect our zoning laws, and a hungry or panicked animal cannot read a city limit sign.
Which leaves us with a final, highly challenging concept to chew on. Your sources frame this incident as a critical warning signal.
But a warning of what exactly?
Right. If truly successful conservation eventually guarantees that wild apex predators will inevitably wander into our concrete environments, is true coexistence even possible without fundamentally redesigning the architecture and acoustic footprint of our cities?
It's a massive undertaking.
It is. Or, despite all our highest ecological ideals, will human safety always ultimately require a fenced-in, heavily curated version of nature? The next time you walk down a busy street completely immersed in the human world, ask yourself just how wild are we actually willing to let our world become?
Okay, one question for you. How did a wild wolf manage to enter a busy urban shopping street in Hamburg without being detected earlier, and what gaps in wildlife monitoring or urban safety systems does this incident expose? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.